What questions should you be asking when you're buying a home? Today is going to be the home buying question checklist. All right, everybody, thanks for being with me. We're going to go through what you should be asking when you are buying a home, the checklist you should be through. Now, I appreciate the question. If you've got a question like this you'd like to have me answer, type it in the comments below, and I'll create a video just like this for you and for all my other wonderful YouTube subscribers. If you're not a subscriber, please consider doing that. Okay, so what should you be asking when you're buying a home? This is really going to come down to one of two things. Is this for you as a homeowner, owner occupied, right? You're going to move into it, or is this as an investment? Okay, so there's one thing you need to realize. If you're buying a home that's listed on the multiple listing service, what the seller is going to do is they're going to provide what's called a seller's property disclosure. Now, if you're buying an off-market property, that's not going to be a requirement, but that doesn't mean you don't have to still get it. So every single board of realtors has a seller's property condition disclosure. And the reason that they require that is they want to eliminate lawsuits and problems and conflicts and everything else like that. So if you're listing your house on the multiple listing, most of the multiple listings require a seller's property condition disclosure unless it specifically states it's not going to be provided, and they opt out of that and both parties agree to it. But when you're buying an off-market property, you're not going to get a seller's property condition disclosure. Not at all. So you have a couple of options here. You can ask for it, so you can put your property under contract and ask it and give it to the seller and say, hey, will you fill this out and get it back to me? So you can put that as part of your contract when you're not buying it, but you need to all you gotta do is Google seller's property condition disclosure for whatever state you're in or whatever county you're in. There'll be a template there. You can print that off, get a copy of that. You can put in your purchase contract that the seller is required to give you a seller's property condition disclosure. Let's talk about what that is. It basically goes through the entire property, right? It's got all these things, and it's going to say roof, and it's going to say foundation, and it's going to say HVAC, all this stuff. And it's going to say, have you had any repair work done on it? Is it in good condition? Is it in bad condition? Have you had any? It's going to ask questions which would then help somebody know there's a problem going on with the property. I'll give you an example. Just this last week, I was with a real estate investor friend of mine. He's a wholesaler. He found a property. He did not get a seller's property condition disclosure. Put the property under contract. They were getting a really good deal on that. They sent the property out to their buyers list, did an open house where people came to the property. They then sold the property. They sold the property in as-is condition. They did not provide any seller's property condition disclosures or anything else. He made his money. The new guy bought it, and off they went. Well, a few weeks later, that new buyer called him, and the buyer said, hey, can I get a copy of your seller's property condition disclosure when you purchased the property? And my friend said, I didn't get one. I don't require one. And he said, oh, okay. Do you know anything about the sewer, the septic? And he said, no, I have no idea. We buy as is, we sell as is, we don't do inspections, we have no idea. It's your responsibility. You knew that, you signed off. And the buyer says, yeah, I know. And he said, well, what's going on? And the new buyer said, well, the property is not connected to the public sewer system. And as a matter of fact, there's not a septic or a sewer on it. So it's gonna have to be connected, and it's like pretty expensive, like $50,000 to do that. Well, if my friend would have required a seller's property condition disclosure, he would have known that information. That's a double-edged sword, because if he knew that information, he then is going to want to disclose that to the new buyer, which can get into some trouble as well. And I'm not saying you should withhold anything or not ask for it, but if you find out this information and you're wholesaling, you may get yourself in some trouble if you don't disclose that to a new buyer. And so you're going to want to be careful with this information. So I would recommend either getting a seller's property condition disclosure, or the other thing you can do is you can do your own inspection. Now, the downside to the inspection, it's going to run you like $350 to probably $550. It just depends. You don't want to do an inspection unless you have the property under contract, because you're going to have to outlay this cash to do the inspection. The inspection, I look at it like an insurance policy. You're going to lay some money out, and you may choose not to buy the property because of it, but that's a lot cheaper than putting a whole bunch of money down and buying a property and later finding out it's not connected to the septic system. See, that's the other thing this end buyer could have done. If they would have done an inspection, they would have found these things out and decided not to buy the property, and then they could have made some different decisions. So the one thing that we're talking about on this home buying questions checklist is property condition. And we can know that by getting seller's property condition disclosure. Now the seller could lie and not tell us things, and then they'd be liable and you'd have to sue them and that stuff. You could do an inspection, which gets most of things. The other thing you can do, I do kind of a hybrid of this. My contractor does kind of a mini inspection where he checks the major systems. What he's going to do is get on the roof. He's going to go look at the foundation as much as he can, go through the crawl space or walk around. He's going to look at the HVAC. He's going to look at the panel box for the electrical. He's going to check out the roofing to make sure it's in good shape. So we're dealing with like the major systems, right? We've run the plumbing. We know the plumbing works. The electrical panels, the electrical, the roof, getting in the attic, looking at the foundation, looking at the HVAC, and looking at the electrical panel. Once I've seen those things, more than everything else is typically cosmetic at that point, and I now know what I'm dealing with. Now, when it comes to this home buying question checklist, if we're talking about what to say to sellers that are interested in selling, motivated sellers, I have a whole video on that you can check out. This is really what you should be asking while you've got that property under contract or right before you put the property under contract. And it really comes down to the condition of the property and what's happening with the property so that you can know. The other question you're going to want to make sure you're dealing with here is title insurance. Okay, title insurance is going to tell us if this property is on here. It's going to tell us, let's say this is the beautiful house right here. It's going to tell us if there's easements running through here, electrical lines that can come through here. You're going to be able to see those things when you get a title report or a preliminary title report. Typically when you're making your purchase, it is conditioned upon you getting an acceptable preliminary title report and for you to check that out. So that's the other thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to check out your preliminary title report and say, is there anything from the title? So when we're dealing with the condition of the property and we're dealing with the title of the property, we're going to assume at this point you already know you're getting a good deal because you've ran your comps. We're going to also assume your contractor has given you a bid. So now it just comes down to the nitty-gritty of the closing in this home buying questions checklist, which is going to come down to property condition and is going to come down to the title work. So making sure you're getting the title work and making sure that you are getting your condition of the property. The next and third thing we're going to be talking about here is hazard insurance. Okay, hazard insurance is there to cover if the house burns to the ground. If the house burns down and that type of stuff, you've got hazard insurance. Keep in mind there's a deductible, so you may have to pay $5,000 and then they pay the rest after that. There's some sort of deductible, and hazard insurance doesn't cover everything, but it does cover a lot of things, and so you're going to want to make sure you have hazard insurance. The home buying question on this checklist that we're doing is going to be, does it cover a vacant policy? Because I can tell you, many years ago, right after Christmas, I was super excited because we were going to go on the airplane and head to Hawaii. And if you're from Utah, there's a lot of snow in Utah, which I love the snow. And if you're a skier, by the way, post that in the comments because I'd love to know. I love to ski. But getting away from the cold and the dark for a little bit is pretty fun. So we were going to leave. We're in the middle of a rehab. I should say we're at the end of a rehab. Had just finished all the rehab. We were going to list the property on the market. I swung by the property right before we took off, like the day before, just to check some things out and see the final work. Well, guess what I heard? I heard running water. So I walked into the kitchen, and the underneath the sink, there was there was a pipe fitting that was broken, and there was water going down, and I could hear it. And I could feel it. And nobody had been there for probably a few days or a week. So I went down the stairs, and there was about 2 feet of water downstairs. And so I was freaking out. I called my plumber, turned the water off, and then we had to get all the water out of there and try and salvage it. Now keep in mind, this is after we just finished the basement, which means we're gonna have to go back and spend more money to get more work done, let alone remediate and get rid of the water and everything else like that. So what did I do? I called my handy dandy insurance agent and said, I need to put a claim in here because we have a ton of damage. We need to get this covered. And he said, oh yeah, let's do this and everything else. Well, guess what? The claim got denied. Why did the claim get denied? because my policy was not a vacant policy. At the time, I didn't even know what a vacant policy was. What I actually had is called a renter's policy. And here's the deal. When you have a renter's policy, it's assumed the majority of time someone is living inside this house. So if somebody's living inside of that house and that water would have started, they could have called, gotten help, turned it off, and the damage that would have been done to this property would have been a lot less, statistically speaking, than if the property was vacant. And so here's the deal. Vacant policies are more money. And they're more money for a reason, which is because there's more risk. They have to pay out more if that property is vacant. Now, are they substantially more? No. I mean, you're talking $700, $1,000, $500 versus like $250. So it might be double the price, well worth every penny. But those are the questions you should be asking. So let's just kind of recap here on our home buying questions checklist. Number 1, do you have a seller's property condition disclosure? Number 2, should you be doing an inspection on the property? Number 3, do you want to just have your contractor do an inspection on the property? Number 4, am I getting a preliminary title report, and do I know what to do and look for on those types of things? And number, I don't know what number we're on, I think 6, hazard insurance, is it a vacant policy? Now, if you've enjoyed this video, please hit the thumbs up button and also consider subscribing. I have a motivated seller sheet. We didn't talk about the things you should be talking about to the seller about when they call you. This is before you go under contract and you're dealing with these things. What should you be saying to somebody? We call that a motivated seller checklist, where this is more a home buyer checklist. That motivated seller checklist helps you with what to say. If you'd like to get my copy of it, I'll send it to you for free. Just text me at 435-294-0433. 435-294-0433. Just text your email address, and when you text that email address, it'll automatically send you an email with a seller's motivated seller sheet. You can get a copy of that. I also have a blog on the 21 questions investors should ask when buying a house. I'm putting a link in that in the description. I also have a video you should check out, how to find investment properties for free. Otherwise, make it a profitable day, and bye for now.